Okay, so today is May 26, 2021. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes, excuse me, this is the meeting of the Container Storage Interface Community. On the agenda today, we have a few PRs that need attention. We're going to go through them and discuss them, and then we're going to talk about when to cut the next CSI spec release.
Hey, Sad, are you sharing your screen?
Yeah, let me do that. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
There you go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So first up, we have an issue from Jan about XFS volume clones. Is Jan on the call by any chance? It doesn't look like he is. Let's move this to the end of the agenda and see if Jan joins by then. If not, we can just try to go through it on our own or move it to the next meeting.
I'm curious about it though.
I pinged Jan. He should be back.
Okay. In the meantime, we can jump to the next item: merge force attach.
Yeah. So this is the PR that I presented at last month's meeting, and it's got some reviews and some decent feedback. But I'm wondering what needs to be done to get it in.
I think we need to test this. So we still have until, I see that the merge deadlines, it's code freeze is July, right? So we still have some time.
So let's talk about when to do the CSI spec release. I think there's like 3 PRs that are ready to go. So I think Hamont's FS Group 1, there's an access mode 1, and then there's the length of the paths that's being adjusted. So I think all 3 of those are either merged or close to being able to merge. And
do they need this early for?
Yeah, I think they're going to need a lot of time
Oh.
to integrate with the
Okay.
with upstream Kubernetes.
So yeah, I think this one probably still needs some time. So Ben, do you have an environment to try this out? Because this one looks like we need to have iSCSI to validate. So because my environment, I cannot really test this particular change.
So any plugin that has the capability to sort of grant or deny access on a per node basis and enforce that access could in principle implement this. So like I have a test CSI plugin that implements this. It's not open source, unfortunately. Maybe I could work on that if it would help things. But with iSCSI, this is totally doable. You would just need the plugin implementation would have to be such that LUNs on the storage controller would be denied, or initiators in the Kubernetes cluster would be denied access to any LUN for which there hadn't been a controller publish done to that node, right? That would be the key, is that you would have to have your iSCSI set up to be enforcing security. That there are a lot of iSCSI plugins that don't enforce security. They just sort of give all the nodes access to all the LUNs. And of course that works fine with Kubernetes today, but it doesn't work fine with something like this. So that would be the changes. You would have to actually enforce per node access and revoke access at controller unpublished time and grant access at controller published time and all that, and then demonstrate that it works. So I take the point that like we want to sort of have proof by example that this is feasible. I don't know what you mean by tests though, like
yeah, just run it in the so I can test the controller side changes, the other changes with that cap, right? So I just think it's good to have this, but I don't think I can test this environment. I can take a look again, but I don't think I can really test this exact behavior in my environment because I didn't run into this problem with my with my driver. So I can take another look and see, because I can only just look at it like in theory if we have this, that might work, but I don't think I can test this.
But what do you mean by the problem? Because what I'm
I'm just saying that I think in my case it would just work without those. I need to go read your PR again. I know last time we look at it. I think without that permission, without that without that new capability.
Well, there's two new
could
capabilities
actually work
proposed in
for
the spec, and the most important change in the spec is the change to the state transition diagram. You know, whereas before it was very explicit that you always go from, you know, from volume ready to controller publish to node stage to node unpublish, and then you have to or node publish, and then you have to reverse those steps: node unpublish, node unstage, controller unpublish, and you can't do anything else other than those valid transitions. And so what this does to the spec is it says if you have these capabilities, you can transition directly from having it be node published to have it being controller unpublished while it's still node published and node staged. And the controller unpublished can succeed. And then you have this state where you have this node that it's staged and published, but it can't access the volume because you've basically fenced this node off because you've declared the node to be dead. And then if it turns out that the node wasn't dead, you have to go through this cleanup process of doing a special node unpublish, node unstage with a force flag to sort of get it cleaned up back to the state where you could safely do a controller publish and re-enter the normal state flow. But crucially, like that cleanup involves flushing any caches or cleaning up any state on the node that would cause data corruption if you were to just go back and republish the volume to the old node that you had previously fenced it off from, right? That's the whole point of this. So like you could test all of that logic with the driver that kind of no-opt these operations, and it would work, I think. The key is that it, you know, you go through you have to be able to perform a node unstage and a node unpublish when you can't perform IO to the volume, right? So normal U-mount is going to try to flush your buffers, and if the volume is inaccessible, a normal U-mount is going to fail. So like the node unpublished force is supposed to be a signal that say, hey, even if you fail a U-mount, go ahead and do a U-mount-F, you know, to try to succeed this operation. And we don't care if you lose any data as a result of that because, you know, the system above you has decided to reschedule the workload to a different node, and so any buffer data you have, it's okay to lose that data. That was sort of the main thrust of this, is that normally a plugin will try very hard to not lose data when it does a node unpublish because losing data is bad. But if you get the force flag, it's saying, you know what, it's okay. I've already decided that, you know, I've already given up on whatever unbuffered data or whatever buffer data you had, and I've already I've already counted it as lost, and so it's okay to actually lose it.
So I was thinking about this one, and one thing that is missing, like, is how will Kubernetes use this? Like, there's just
yeah. So I tried to outline that with I added some paragraphs in response to the feedback at the top that says how this is supposed to be used. But yeah, the idea, and this hasn't been encoded into a Kubernetes KEP yet, and I'm happy to help with
no,
that.
this is actually, it's actually in the KEP itself, but I didn't add a lot of details, but I did add the capabilities there. I was just saying, like when I was doing the POC, without the new capability, I think the second that there are two capabilities. I need to go read the details, but the second capability, I don't need that. And then the change I made still works. That's why I was saying that if I tested, I wouldn't tell the difference with or without the capability. That's what I was trying to say. But let me take another look of this.
I mean, I think
you can also, if you can also help review the part in the KEP. Well, I referenced this new capabilities, and if you see what needs to be changed there.
I think part of the problem is that nothing enforces that state transition diagram that's part of the CSI spec. It says like this is the order in which you must make these calls. But like if anything calls those things out of order, a CSI plugin isn't in a position to know that happened and to be able to say, hey, you're doing it wrong, right? So you sort of rely on the correct behavior of the CO, not calling things out of order in the general case. And what we're saying with this specific change is we're relaxing the ordering requirement and forcing the SP to be able to handle things out of order if it has these capabilities. But getting back to what you were specifically saying, like, I'm happy to help shore up the KEP and explain at least my interpretation of exactly how these things should happen. What my question for this group is, do we want to hold up this CSI spec change waiting for the Kubernetes KEP to get in better shape, or do we want to merge this and deal with the KEP later? Like, how do we want to order
I
those
think we need to
operations?
see how this is used, right? Because we don't want to add a CSI change without knowing how this is used in Kubernetes.
Yeah, there's a feasibility feasibility of this design. Like, for example, I mean, it looks good, but for something like EBS driver, how will, if a node is fenced, how we'll have to store that some state somewhere. We'll have to there are a lot of I think details that needs to be worked out, and I feel that we need to a little bit certain about, okay, this is how we're gonna do before we merge the spec change.
Yeah, there's definitely a requirement on the CO to like know which nodes are in this sort of quarantine state. I think that's the state I called it. Is it, you know, when you call controller unpublished out of order with the fence flag, you have to at the same time mark that node as being in a quarantine state, and that would be the Kubernetes would have to implement that with like a taint or some other piece of state on the node object to keep track of this fact. And yeah, I sort of left that out because it's irrelevant to the CSI spec change, but it obviously matters to Kubernetes. So I'm perfectly willing to help clear that up on the Kubernetes side. Is that what we want to do then? We want to leave this unmerged until we have a plan on how we're going to consume it on the Kubernetes side?
I would prefer that.
Yeah.
That's normally what we do. I don't think we have ever merged anything without knowing how to use it in Kubernetes.
Okay. All right, well then that answers my question. So that's the next step for me, is to help get that KEP in better shape so people feel like they understand how this will work on the CO side.
Sounds good. So help get the K8S course. Okay. Any other questions, comments about that one?
Not for me.
Okay, sounds good. Next item, Hemant FS Group on Mount PR.
Yeah, so last meeting we discussed about like making it more strict, and I updated the design to be more strict, is as in, like, if node stage uses a value of FS group, the node publish should use same value. And similarly, like, all the instances of node publish, like if, so for example, this single node multi-writer, the new node that we are proposing, if all the instances of node publish should use same value of FS group. So it's more, lot more restricted, and the error that has allowed us to kind of collapse two error conditions in one. So it's looking good, but obviously, like, we haven't heard from James, but yeah.
Yeah, if there's anyone else on the call that has any concerns about this, speak up. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and merge this by end of day today. I don't have any other concerns with it. And did anyone else get a chance to look at it? I think Deep got a chance to look at it. Looks like he's good with it.
Yeah, no concerns.
Okay. Okay. So let's see.
From a user perspective, is Azure File and Linux going to be the main primary user for now? Is that
Yes, my understanding is that the primary consumer is one of the Azures, I think Azure File.
okay?
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns about FS Group on Mount? All right, we'll move on to Jan's issue. I don't see Jan here, but we can try to walk through the issue on our own and see what the problem might be.
Yeah, I clicked on it, and it's an issue with duplicate UUIDs.
I see.
Wait, he joined the wrong channel.
Oh,
Whoops.
Wrong channel. I think I know where did he join.
yeah, it must be that old Mesos channel that used to be used.
Yeah, just we give him a minute, maybe. I know. Yeah, he should. But basically, like, what happened was that the snapshot you take and you restore, and the volume UID is same, and for XFS, and and mounting fails for that volume. So that volume, the restored basically volume cannot be used on the
Hey,
same node.
question, what do you mean the ID is the same? You create a new volume from the source, right? What do you mean the same UID?
It's a
If you-
file
if you
system
clone-
UUID.
Yeah. If
Oh,
you clone the underlying block device, then the file system is going to look identical, including the UUID
okay.
that got stamped on the file system. But it looks like
Oh,
Jan
is this a
recommended
general?
some
So
changes
question,
here.
is this a general file system problem? Is only XFS? Does this be a
Hello, sorry.
problem for
this
other
is
file systems as
on
well?
the wrong meeting. By the way, the calendar invite is wrong probably, but yeah, this is only XFS.
Okay.
And well, I noticed it just today, like nobody tested it probably. So that kind of implies we should have E2E test for it in Kubernetes. And yeah, it is on file system, only
It's
on
a
XFS.
okay, because their implementation basically when you do this, they just copied the ID as well, UID as well.
Yeah, well, if you restore a snapshot, you get the whole block device, including the UID of the file system.
Okay.
And kernel doesn't like it. It's easy to fix. If you mount it with a special option -o no UUID, then kernel will allow multiple volumes with the same UID to be mounted, and that's it basically.
Are there any
Or-
ramifications for doing that?
I don't know. Like if you happen to have two devices that represent the same volume in the storage backend, and you mount it twice, then you are going to corrupt it. But if it is the same device and you mount it twice, it should be okay, I think.
You said easy fix. So where do you fix it while you are doing this clone, or where do you fix it?
Like there are two ways. You can provide a special command line option on mount.
Is that the
mount
no
option?
UUID option that you mentioned?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or
you also mentioned XFS admin -q
yeah,
generate.
you can regenerate new UUID, but then the CSI driver must know that okay, I restored snapshot, or I cloned the volume. I should change the UUID. And I don't think CSI drivers know that. They just mount typically.
So that's
They don't have a like.
So just
But that's
bug
a
in
bug in
XFS
all the CSI
driver,
drivers.
or what is? Okay, so where is the bug then? Is it bug of the driver itself, or?
Well, that's my question. I wanted to discuss it here. Like,
Okay.
like, whose fault is that? Is it the is it the Kubernetes or CO?
Where is
Because it
Kubernetes?
knows it's cloning
Problem of
file system.
XFS, I think, right? No.
Well,
So I encountered a similar bug related to taking a snapshot of a live file system and then cloning it to a read-only volume. You can end up in a situation where like you have an unclean journal in the file system, and at mount time, the kernel wants to replay the journal, but the device is read-only, and so that fails. And so the correct thing to do in that case is there's an option you can pass to mount that says don't replay the journal. And then the driver just has to know that if it's a read-only device, it needs to use that mount option. And so like there's all kinds of these little subtle bugs that related to, you know, cloning of file systems that a lot of people probably just don't realize are out there, and you'll gradually bump into them. There's nothing you can do other than just fix all the CSI drivers to deal with these bugs, and probably write tests that tickle the bugs so that everyone who's developing drivers can notice that when they have them and they need to fix them. Like this one seems like an easy one. You write an E2E test that says create a volume, take a snapshot of it, clone the volume, and then mount the clone on the same node where the original one is still mounted, and see if it works or not. And
Yes,
Ben,
it is easy to test.
in your case with the unclean journal, but would mounting it with the unclean journal potentially cause other problems?
no, I mean it's just that the snapshot ends up being effectively slightly backwards in time from when it actually was taken, right? It's just, if you don't replay the journal, it means you get the snapshot of the data at the last journal flush instead of the moment the snapshot was taken. And it only affects read-only copies, right? Because if you have a writable copy, then you just play the journal and you're up to date with when the snapshot was taken. I mean, it's an unavoidable problem if the volume is marked read-only. There's nothing the node can do other than just do its, you know, disable the journal replay at mount time. So that's what I did in my driver.
So what I hear is that we should fix the CSI drivers, like all of them.
And make it easy for CSI drivers to know if they have this bug by adding tests.
Okay. Like for the CSI driver that I know about, they don't know that they are mounting a volume that's restored from snapshot or cloned for the first time. So we would either need to add it somewhere into those drivers, which is super hard, I believe, and or we can just mount it with the right option.
You're talking about the legacy problem where you have existing snapshots and existing volumes that were cloned from them that can't have the metadata that you would need to know that you need to do this.
Oh, well, that's one thing. And the second one thing, like, I know, like the EDS driver or GC driver, they just restore a snapshot and mount it. Like, there is no communication between the control plane that restored the snapshot and the node plane that mounts it for the first time.
Well, the communication is the volume context, right? Or the published context.
But you can't change it after you mount it. So you can't take a note, okay, I changed the UID, so I don't need to do it next time.
Oh, right, okay. Right, so even if the controller can tell the node this is a newly cloned snapshot, the node can't say, okay, I have changed the UUID, so you don't need to do that again. Right. Yeah, this is a generalized problem we have with nodes not being able to tell the controller anything.
Ian, is there a CSI driver for XFS? I don't see that in our CSI driver docs.
All the CSI drivers, they support X4 and XFS file system, usually.
Yeah, every CSI driver can support XFS or
not. You're
not.
saying this is just for, okay, for drivers that are supporting this. It's not really a specific, okay, I see what you're saying.
So a solution seems like all the CSI drivers should mount always with no UID if the file system is XFS.
That's
yeah. I think that seems like the easiest solution, as long as we don't, that doesn't cause like weird side effects.
Okay, we can try.
The only side effect I could imagine is that like the things that rely on FS tabs might not be able to get the UUID of the volume, but like the way that CSI drivers are used to mount volumes to pods, nobody cares about FS tabs. It's just, you specify the path that you want Kubernetes to mount the volume to, and it's there. And the fact that there's no UUID should be irrelevant in that use case. Like UUIDs are useful in the situation where you're mounting by UUID because you're reading an FS tab.
Should we try and start implementing these changes on CSI drivers and see how far we get?
I would start by like writing the E2E test that demonstrates the problem and then see if this fixes the problem. And then if it does, declare victory and just publicize this is the recommended way to fix the problem.
Okay, I can try to pick some random CSI driver and fix it and write E2E test for that. But as long when I merge the E2E test, it's going to fail for all the other CSI drivers that run the same tests.
But that's good, right? Because they're all broken.
Yeah, but that means somebody needs to fix all the drivers before like releasing the next version. Like all the CI jobs will be red.
You can make the test optional for now.
What do you mean by optional? It is either green or red.
You can, the E2E test doesn't need to run by default. You can have it be an opt-in test.
But then that doesn't help us get over the hump of fixing the drivers
That means,
that are broken.
yes. That means the driver has to opt in to add this new test that will break them.
Beautiful.
We could probably do like a gradual thing, right? Where you announce this, you publicize it on the announce list, wait like a release or something, and then switch it on maybe in the next release. So it starts off as an optional test, and then eventually it becomes a mandatory one. So if someone doesn't notice the announce messages, then they'll hopefully notice the failing test.
Okay. Do we have optional tests in the CSI Sanity? Because that's what people usually use, at least I use.
You can have tests
I'm
that skip.
not sure if
You can have some test cases that
I'm
skip
not sure
based
if
on the condition.
yeah. I'm not sure if we test file systems in CSI Sanity today.
Damn.
Jonathan, what were you saying? Can you say it again? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying you can skip tests based on a certain condition. That's kind of what we did with the one of the bugs that I worked on. I'm drawing a blank on the name now, but basically it would fail by default. Oh, making sure that the volume was unmounted by the driver. That's skipped by default. It's sort of a similar scenario because it would fail automatically on a lot of drivers until it gets fixed.
And to go back to Ben's point that this is a general class of problems, like this is one example of it, is the plan then we fix every new instance of such a bug in the CSI drivers and write a test?
I mean, given that there's no mechanism for sharing this kind of code, I don't know how we could do anything other than fix each CSI driver one at a time. Because we've pushed this whole problem down into the CSI driver of how do you mount things.
It would be nice to have some list or some section in the CSI spec, like common problems and how to fix them. Like beware of UIDs, beware of read-only volumes.
Oh yeah, yeah, like a sort of a tips for driver implementers that lists all the pitfalls that you're likely to fall into. That would be really helpful, I bet.
We could start with a Kubernetes CSI developer page. We already have a developer website, and we could add a page there, and then if it becomes something that's really nice, we can just move it into the spec. Okay, so let me write down the conclusions here. So for this bug, we will pick a random CSI driver to fix this issue in the driver, to write an end-to-end test to catch this issue, 3, make the E2E test opt-in and send messages to CSI announce to encourage other CSI drivers to fix this issue. 4, at some point in the future, make the test required.
Okay. I can pick at least the first 2, maybe 3.
This problem is, oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Oh, I just want to ask, this problem exists for all CSI?
Jing, I think
driver
you got
or just
cut
some
off.
CSI
Can you say that again? All I heard was this problem exists for both.
For every CSI driver, or for just some CSI driver?
Every CSI driver that supports XFS.
Oh, okay. Because as I recall, Windows actually have a very similar problem. So when you make a snapshot of a disk and try to attach the restore disk on the same node, and so the problem for Windows is, I think the disk, those 2 disks will have the same disk signature or same like partition UID, and the Windows cannot make the second disk online. So the solution for Windows is we always make a call to set like a disk online. But I don't know, like Linux would be different, whether there is something for the second disk do
Yeah,
some
I
special.
think in this case it's the mount option, the no UUID mount option.
Okay.
And then to the bug that Ben pointed out, does somebody want to handle that in a similar way as well in terms of writing a test?
So the bug I pointed out was related to a proposed change that hasn't merged yet. I think there was a proposed change in the external provisioner sidecar to if the only access mode required was read-only many, to mark the PV itself as read-only, And the question was like, what could possibly go wrong if we do this? And I pointed out that this potential
Got
problem.
it.
If we do that, then
I mean,
we then we force nodes to deal with the situation of having to mount a volume where they can't perform writes, which means unclean journals can't be flushed, and node plugins have to do something about that.
how
But
much
it
of that?
isn't merged yet.
How much of that is avoided if we just say you need, before taking a snapshot, you need to quiesce it?
How do you do that? Like that's a application level thing, right?
Yeah,
Snapshots are done at the
but
storage
if
layer.
correct, but if you quiesce the application before taking a snapshot, that should flush the file system.
Yeah, if you stop writing to the file system and you trigger the kernel to do its buffer flushing, whatever it needs doing, then yes, you would sidestep that problem. But I want to emphasize that it's not really a problem. Unless you're trying to restore to a read-only volume, which is a weird thing to do to begin with, right? Like, why would you restore a snapshot to a read-only volume and expect it to have exactly the same contents as like the most? We don't make any statements about like what the state of the snapshot is, right? We just say you take a snapshot and you get the copy of the data at some point, right? Because volumes are constantly changing. And I don't think we make any strong guarantees about, what exactly
I
you're going
mean,
to get back from the snapshot. So
we don't
if it's before
guarantee
the last
any.
journal flush, it's still a valid snapshot. It's still a consistent view of the file system. It's just a consistent view of the file system 5 seconds ago.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
just
that's-
wondering because we don't guarantee anything about data consistency, right? When you take a snapshot. So this is kind of one of those things where it's like, maybe this is just a best practice documentation. If you're going to do this, then you should flush the file system first.
By the way, reading the no UID option, it says that this is useful to mount LVM snapshot volumes and often used in combination with no recovery for mounting read-only snapshots. So it says that no UID generally is used with no recovery, and that's like the read-only snapshot. So do we support like LVM snapshot like via CSI? Like there's always a restore step, but
Yeah,
the
I mean,
LVM.
you could write a CSI driver that uses LVM and LVM snapshots to perform snapshots. I've done that.
But there's no restore in that step. Like the snapshot is immediately usable, like as a volume.
Right. Well, Kubernetes doesn't let you directly mount a snapshot. You have to clone it to a volume first. And how you implement that in your CSI driver is up to you. But if you're using LVM, you would presumably create a second clone. Right. The first clone would be the snapshot. The second clone would be the new volume created from the snapshot.
So yeah, so the no recovery will be like just the sort is used in those cases, like if you did have a read-only snapshot.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't see this as the end of the world. It's just if you have read-only volumes, that's how you have to mount your volumes. And if you really care about replaying your journal, you make the restored volume writable. And then when it gets mounted, it'll replay the journal and you'll have the most up-to-date copy of that volume.
Okay, I think we have general conclusion here. So for this bug, pick a random CSI driver, fix the issue, write an end-to-end test, make the end-to-end test opt-in, and then at some point in the future, make it required. For the bug that Ben pointed out, it's not an issue yet, so nothing to do there. For generally this class of bug going forward, basically we have to follow the same process if we ever encounter another similar bug. Any questions, concerns, comments on this? Okay, I think we can move on to the last item, which is when do we cut the CSI.next release? The question is coming up because I think some of the changes we want to make, like the access mode, are going to require a number of changes to the CSI sidecar as well as core Kubernetes. So we want to make sure there's enough time to make those changes. So if we cut it too close to the code freeze, as we normally do, then we won't have enough time to make those changes. So sooner is better. As I understand it, there are kind of 3 big changes that we've been tracking so far: the access mode change, Hemant's FS group change, the length change from Jiawei, and then there's a 4th one, which is this Ben's force detach. So the first 3, I think, are ready to go. They should be merging soon at some point this week. It sounds like the long straw is this force detach. Do we want to kind of put a stake in the ground and say we'll cut a release by a certain date, and if this makes it by then, great. If not, we hold off until the next release?
What date you're talking about? The date for cutting the only for this PR or for
just the next release.
1.22, you mean, for the
CSI 1.5?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that basically, so if you can make it, then we merge that with the rest of the PRs. Otherwise, we wait until the next, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right now, the good thing is that code freeze is kind of far away. It's July 8th, and we are at the end of May. So what we could say is we'll officially cut something at the end of maybe the first week of June. That'll give us 4 weeks, almost 5 weeks to implement. I guess we could even move it towards the second week of June if we needed to. I guess it depends on how long you think it might take for the force detach.
Yeah, so I think the second week of June will be better.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I just like to incorporate that in the POC that I have. That just do some simple testing, maybe.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Then we can feel better, because right now, yeah, I think that would be better.
Okay.
I can work with Ben on that.
Sounds good. So what we'll say is plan to cut CSI.next on CSI.next RC on June 7, and then plan to cut CSI RG final on June. 3 days after that, 1, 2, 3 becomes the 10th. And okay, so I think that seems reasonable to me. I'll go ahead and share that out with the folks that are waiting on this. Hemant, does that work for you?
It works.
Okay, cool. And I'll share that with Chris and Jiawei as well. All right, I think that's all I had on the agenda today. Is there anything else folks wanted to talk about? John, I had a question. I've updated the invitation for this meeting. And so if you are subscribed to the CSI Community Google group, you should have the latest invite. I'm wondering how you have a stale invite, because if you have one, someone else might have one, and that's concerning.
Yeah, okay. I have a copy created by Brett Childs.
Ah, okay. That'll do it.
So that explains it.
It always seems like mine is not automatically updated. Like I have to manually.
Are you subscribed to have mail delivered to your inbox from CSI-community?
I can check. No, I have your email, so I basically have to look at the email. But otherwise, it looks like the. Yeah, I will double check.
Okay. And I think I believe it's even on the Kubernetes. No, we didn't put it on the Kubernetes.
Yeah, this is not Kubernetes calendar. don't think. Do we
Yeah.
want to add there?
I think we've actually.
Can probably.
Yeah, we did. We did. So it is on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you look at the Kubernetes SIG storage calendar, the latest is on there. So if you just want to copy it from there, you can copy it from there.
Okay.
And I think I also updated the top of this doc with the latest links. Yep. So this doc should be updated. Yeah, just go ahead and grab the newest copy from the CSI or from the Kubernetes SIG storage shared calendar. Otherwise, if you're subscribed to the Google group, you should be getting the updated invite, but I don't know why that doesn't happen in some cases. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.